Jesse Blackwood's fist slammed into the frozen earth until his knuckles split open. Blood dripped onto his wife's grave, melting small holes in the snow. He didn't feel the pain. Hadn't felt much of anything in 3 years. "I can't do this anymore, Margaret." His voice cracked like breaking ice. "Our boys are slipping away from me. Sam won't look at me without hate in his eyes. Willie hasn't spoken in 8 months. 8 months, Maggie. And I'm bringing a stranger into our home because I'm too weak to save them myself." The wind howled its answer. Cold. Empty. Indifferent. Somewhere on a train heading west, a woman named Clara Whitmore pressed her hand against her barren womb and prayed she wasn't running toward another grave. Before we begin, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if this tale grabs your heart, hit subscribe and stay until the end. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. 10. Stage ain't coming. Jesse turned from the empty road. Old Ezra Hutchins stood behind him, collar pulled up against the bitter wind. "It's coming. Son, I've lived in this valley 62 years. Ain't no driver fool enough to—" "She's on that stage, Ezra." "The mail order woman. Her name's Clara." Jesse's jaw tightened. "And she's coming." Ezra studied him with eyes that had seen too many men break under Montana winters. What if she took one look at that snow in Denver and turned right back around? What then? Jesse didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because if Clara Whitmore didn't step off that stage today, he'd have to walk back into that cold house and tell his boys that hope was just another word for disappointment. Again. "Papa!" He spun around. Sam stood in the doorway of Miller's General Store, 11 years old, with eyes that belonged to a man of 40. The boy had his mother's dark stare, the same stare that used to make Jesse feel like the luckiest man alive. Now it just made him feel like a failure. "Stage is late," Jesse said. "That's all." "Willie's cold." "I know. He's asking for Mama again." The words hit like a knife between the ribs. Jesse closed his eyes. Tell him what, Papa." Another lie. Sam's voice was flat, dead. "She ain't comin'. The woman from your letters. Nobody ever comes. Nobody ever stays." "Sam, Mama didn't stay. Why would some stranger be any different?" The boy disappeared back into the store before Jesse could respond. Ezra let out a long breath. "That child carries more weight than any soul his age ought to." "I know. And the little one, Willie—" Jesse's throat closed up. "Doc Webb says the silence is grief. Says it'll pass." "It's been 8 months. I know that too." They stood in silence, 2 men watching snowfall on an empty road. Then Ezra gripped Jesse's shoulder. "Whatever happens today, you ain't alone. Remember that." But Jesse was alone. Had been alone since the night he'd held Margaret's hand and watched the light leave her eyes. Alone with 2 broken boys and a dying ranch, and a heart so hollowed out he sometimes forgot it was still beating. A shout cut through the wind. "Stage coming!" Jesse's head snapped up. There, a dark shape pushing through the white 6 horses, struggling against drifts that came up past their knees. His heart slammed against his ribs. Please, please let her be on it. Please let her be real. The stage lurched to a halt. Pike the driver tumbled down cursing about frozen axles and damn fool runs. Passengers emerged one by one. A cattle buyer, a preacher, a young couple with frightened eyes. And then, she stepped out like a ghost materializing from the storm. Small, too thin. A gray dress that had seen better years, a bonnet that barely contained dark auburn hair. She clutched a single carpet bag like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. Their eyes met across 15 feet of swirling snow. Jesse saw terror in her gaze. Raw, undisguised terror. The kind that came from gambling everything on a stranger's promise. He reckoned she saw the same thing in his. She squared her shoulders, a visible act of will, and walked toward him. Her steps were small, careful, like she was measuring each one, like she was giving herself permission to run at any moment. She stopped in front of him, barely came up to his shoulder. "Mr. Blackwood?" "Miss Whitmore." He pulled off his hat. "Welcome to Montana." "Thank you." She didn't quite meet his eyes. "I apologize for the delay." "Ain't your fault. Storm came early this year." An awkward silence stretched between them. Jesse scrambled for something to say, but every word that came to mind felt wrong. "Is that your only bag?" he finally managed. "Yes." Something flickered across her face. Pride fighting with shame. "I didn't have much worth bringing. We got everything you need at the ranch." "That's kind of you." Another silence. The townspeople were watching now. Jesse could feel their eyes boring into his back. Let them watch. Let them whisper about the desperate widower who'd sent for a mail-order bride because he couldn't hold his family together on his own. "Papa," Jesse turned. Sam had emerged from the store, Willie's hand gripped tight in his. Both boys stared at Clara with identical expressions of guarded hostility. Willie's thumb was in his mouth. He only did that when he was scared. "Boys," Jesse's voice came out rough. "This is Miss Whitmore. She's come to help us. To be our new mama." Willie's voice was muffled around his thumb. First words he'd spoken to anyone but Sam in months. Clara went pale. "I'm here to help your father. That's all." "Papa said you were coming to marry him." Sam's tone was pure challenge. "That makes you a mama whether you want it or not." "Sam." Jesse put a hand on his son's shoulder. "That's enough. Why she should know what she's walking into." Sam pulled free, his dark eyes fixed on Clara. "Our mama died. Our real mama. And Papa thinks he can just replace her with some stranger from back east who probably can't even ride a horse or milk a cow or survive a single winter out here." Samuel James Blackwood. "It's all right." Clara held up her hand. Her voice was steady, despite the fear in her eyes. "He's right to be angry." Sam blinked. "What?" "I said you're right to be angry." She didn't crouch down to his level, didn't soften her voice like she was talking to a child. She spoke to him straight. "Your mama died, and that's the worst thing that can happen to anyone. And now here I am, some stranger showing up to take her place. I'd be angry too." Sam's jaw worked. "You don't know anything about her." "No, I don't. But I know she must have been remarkable to raise a boy brave enough to speak his mind to a stranger." Clara paused. "And I know I'm not here to replace her. Nobody could." "Then why are you here?" "Because I had nowhere else to go, same as your father had no one else to ask." Her eyes met Sam's without flinching. "We're both desperate, your papa and me. That's the truth. Ugly as it is." For a long moment nobody spoke. The wind howled, snow kept falling, and something shifted in Sam's expression, not softening, not acceptance, but maybe the faintest crack in his armor. Willie tugged his thumb out of his mouth. "Are you gonna die?" The question landed like a slap. Jesse watched Clara flinch, watched her hands tighten on her carpet bag. He waited for her to lie, to offer empty comfort, to say what adults always said to frighten children. She didn't. "I don't plan on it." Her voice was rough. "But I can't promise forever. Nobody can. All I can promise is today. Is that enough for now?" Willie considered this with terrible seriousness. Then quietly, "Mama promised forever." She lied. "She didn't lie, sweetheart. She just couldn't keep the promise. There's a difference." "Is there?" "I think so. But you're allowed to disagree." Willie stared at her for another long moment. Then he reached out and touched her hand, just a brush of small fingers against her glove. "Your hands are cold," he said. "So are yours. Papa's wagon has blankets." It wasn't acceptance, wasn't trust, but it was something. "We should get moving," Jesse said. "Storm's getting worse." The wagon ride was silent. Clara sat on the far end of the bench, shoulders hunched against the cold. Jesse had offered his coat. She'd refused. He hadn't pushed. The boys huddled in the back under every blanket they owned. Sam watched Clara with that unnerving stare. Willie had fallen asleep against his brother, exhaustion finally winning. 4 miles passed before anyone spoke. "Your letters said you were a schoolteacher." Clara didn't turn. "I was." "What happened?" "I'd rather not discuss it." "Fair enough." Jesse kept his eyes on the road. "Ain't my business anyway." More silence. The horses plowed forward through drifts that grew deeper with every mile. "I was good at it." Clara's voice was barely audible over the wind. "Teaching. The children liked me. Their parents trusted me. And then my husband died, and people's trust has a way of evaporating when a woman becomes—" She paused, searching for the word. "Inconvenient." Jesse glanced at her. Her profile was sharp against the gray sky, jaw set tight. "Someone hurt you. Someone destroyed me." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. "A woman at the school. She spread lies about me and a student's father, said I was immoral, unfit to teach children. Were the lies true? Does it matter? People believe them. That's all that counts in polite society." Her laugh was hollow. "By the time she was done, I couldn't find work anywhere in Philadelphia. Couldn't walk down the street without whispers following me." "So you ran." "So I answered an advertisement from a stranger in Montana because it was that or starve." She finally turned to look at him. "Does that frighten you, knowing you've brought a ruined woman into your home?" Jesse held her gaze. "I've got 2 sons who won't speak to me, a ranch that's 3 months from foreclosure, and a hole in my chest where my heart used to be. Reckon I ain't in any position to judge anybody." Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite warmth, but maybe the absence of cold. "You didn't mention foreclosure in your letters. You didn't mention being run out of Philadelphia. Fair point. Reckon we both got secrets." Jesse turned back to the road. "Way I see it, secrets are just truths waiting for the right moment." Clara was quiet for a long time. Then so softly, he almost missed it. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not pretending this is anything other than what it is. 2 desperate people making a bargain." "Ain't nothing shameful in desperation, Miss Whitmore. Just means you're still fighting." He paused. "Most people give up long before they get desperate." She didn't respond, but he felt something shift between them. Not trust too early for that, but maybe the beginning of understanding. The ranch appeared through the snow like a ghost, dark shapes against white nothing. House, barn, corrals. Everything covered in frost and silence. "That's it," Jesse said. "The Blackwood place." Clara leaned forward, squinting. "It's—" He braced himself. For disappointment. For regret. For the moment she realized what she'd traded her old life for. "It's real," she said quietly. "I spent the whole train ride imagining something from a dime novel. But this is just a house, a barn, a life. That disappoint you?" "No." She turned to him, and for the first time, something like hope flickered in her eyes. "I've had enough of fantasy. Real is what I need." Quag. The house was cold as a tomb. Jesse got a fire going while Clara stood in the middle of the kitchen taking it all in. Dirty dishes, dusty floors, a table that hadn't seen a proper meal in months. "I know it's a mess," he started. "Where's the kindling?" He blinked. "What, kindling? For the stove. Those boys need hot food and they need it now." "You don't have to, Mr. Blackwood." She turned to face him, and there was steel in her voice he hadn't heard before. "You brought me here to help. Let me help." For a moment he just stared at her. This small, frightened woman who'd stepped off a stagecoach 2 hours ago, who had every reason to curl up in a corner and cry. Instead, she was rolling up her sleeves. "Kindling's by the back door," he said. "Pump takes 3 pulls to catch. Flowers in the bin by the window." "Thank you." "Miss Whitmore?" "Yes." "Call me Jesse. Mr. Blackwood was my father." She nodded once. Then call me Clara. He left to tend the horses, and Clara got to work. The kitchen came alive around her. Fire in the stove, water heating, coffee starting to smell like something other than despair. Clara moved through the motions without thinking, letting muscle memory take over while her mind tried to make sense of everything. She was here, really here. 2,000 miles from Philadelphia, from the whispers from the grave where Thomas lay. Thomas, her husband. Dead 3 years now, and she still caught herself reaching for him in the night. "Would you understand?" she asked his ghost. "Would you forgive me for running?" No answer. There never was. "You're using too much water." Clara spun around. Sam stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with those cold, dark eyes. "For the coffee," he clarified. "Mama always said you need less water up here. Something about the altitude." "Thank you for telling me." Sam shrugged, didn't leave. Clara poured out some water, adjusted the proportions. "What else should I know?" "About what?" "About this house. About how things work here. You've lived here your whole life. I've been here an hour." His eyebrows rose. "You're asking me? You seem like the kind of person who notices things. The kind who knows more than he lets on." She turned back to the stove. "I could use someone like that on my side." Silence stretched between them. Clara felt his eyes on her back, felt him weighing her words, deciding how much to trust. "The stove's got a crack in the firebox," he finally said. "Heat escapes on the right side. You gotta put more wood on the left, or nothing cooks even." "Show me." He moved past her, adjusting the wood with quick, practiced hands. "Mama figured this out. Took her a whole winter of burned biscuits." "She sounds clever." She was. His voice hardened. Clever and kind and beautiful. And she died anyway. Screaming in her bed, burning up with fever, calling for Papa while he just stood there and watched. The words hit like a fist to the chest. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. "Don't be sorry. Sorry's just a word people use when they don't know what else to say." Sam turned to face her, and his eyes were bright with tears he wouldn't shed. "You want to know what else you should know about this house? It's haunted. Not by ghosts, but by someone who should still be alive. And nothing you do is gonna change that." He left before she could respond. Clara gripped the edge of the stove until her knuckles went white. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about Thomas again, about his last breath, about the way his hand had gone limp in hers. 2 broken families, she thought. That's what we are. 2 shipwrecks clinging to the same piece of driftwood. She wiped her eyes. Got back to work. So, dinner was simple fried salt pork potatoes, biscuits that were harder than Clara would have liked. But it was hot, and the kitchen smelled like something other than emptiness, and when Jesse came back from the barn, he stopped dead in the doorway. "You cleaned." "Just straightened up." "The table, there's a cloth on the table." "Found it in the cupboard. Thought it might be nice." He stood there, snow melting on his shoulders, staring at the kitchen, like he'd never seen it before, like he was afraid it might disappear if he blinked. "Sit down," Clara said gently. "Eat before it gets cold." They ate in silence at first, Sam pushing food around his plate, Willie eating mechanically, still not looking at Clara. Jesse with his head-down fork, moving from plate to mouth, with the rhythm of a man who'd forgotten food could be enjoyed. Then Willie paused, looked up from his plate, and said very quietly, "This tastes like Mama's." The words detonated in the silence. Sam's fork clattered against his plate. Jesse went pale. Clara felt her heart stop. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No." Jesse's voice cracked. "No, he's right. It does. The potatoes. Margaret made them the same way. I can cook something different tomorrow. I should have asked." "Clara." Jesse looked at her, and his eyes were wet. "Thank you." She didn't know what to say. So she just nodded and went back to eating, giving them space for whatever grief they needed to feel. Willie slipped off his chair. For a moment, Clara thought he was leaving. Instead, he walked around the table and stopped beside her, reached up and touched her sleeve. "Can you teach me to cook like Mama?" Her throat closed up. Yes, if you want." I want to remember how her food tasted, but I keep forgetting. His small voice trembled. "I don't want to forget." Clara pulled him into her arms without thinking. He stiffened at first, this stranger holding him, but then he collapsed against her chest and she felt his thin shoulders shake with silent sobs. "You won't forget," she whispered into his hair. "I'll help you remember. I promise." Across the table, Jesse watched them with an expression that might have been hope or might have been fear. Sam watched too, but his face was closed, unreadable. Clara held Willie until his crying stopped. Then she helped him back into his chair and served him seconds without asking if he wanted them. The rest of the meal passed in fragile silence. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and the boys were sent to bed, Jesse found Clara standing on the porch, staring out at the storm. "You'll freeze out here." "I needed air." She didn't turn around. "Is Willie all right?" "He's sleeping. First time in weeks, he didn't cry himself to sleep." "And Sam?" Sam. Jesse moved to stand beside her. "That boy's been angry since the day Margaret died. Angry at God, at me, at the whole damn world. I don't know how to reach him anymore. He reached out to me tonight, told me about the stove. He did. Then he told me this house is haunted by someone who should still be alive." Jesse flinched. "He's not wrong," Clara said quietly. "I can feel her everywhere, in the way the cupboards are organized, in that cloth on the table, in the way Willie expects his potatoes cooked." She finally turned to look at him. "You loved her very much. More than anything. And now you've brought another woman into her home, into her kitchen, to raise her children. I know how it looks. It looks like a man who would do anything to save his family, even break his own heart a little more." Clara's voice softened. "There's no shame in that, Jesse. Just courage." He stared at her. This woman he'd known for less than a day, who'd walked into his broken life and somehow seen past the wreckage to what was underneath. "Why did you really come here?" he asked. "And don't tell me it was just desperation. I've read your letters 3 times each. You're educated. You're capable. You could have found another way." Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Can you keep a secret?" "Reckon I can. I was pregnant once, after Thomas died." Her hands moved to her stomach, an unconscious gesture that made Jesse's chest tighten. 3 months along when I lost it. The doctor said there was scarring, said I might never... She trailed off, but Jesse understood. "And that woman in Philadelphia, the one who spread lies about you. She knew, found out from a nurse at the hospital and used it against me. Said I was God's judgment on loose women." Clara's laugh was bitter as winter wind. As if losing a baby wasn't judgment enough. Jesse didn't know what to say. So he did what Margaret used to do when words failed. He reached out and took Clara's hand. She startled at the contact. Then her fingers tightened around his, holding on like a lifeline. "I came here because I needed to believe that ruined things could still be useful," she whispered. "That broken people could still build something worth having. You're not ruined. Neither are you." She met his eyes. "But we're both pretending to be whole, aren't we, for the children, for ourselves? Maybe pretending's all we got. Maybe." She released his hand, stepped back toward the door. "Or maybe someday we'll forget we're pretending. And that'll be close enough to real." She went inside. Jesse stayed on the porch watching the snowfall, thinking about Margaret, about Clara, about 2 desperate people building something from nothing. Please, he prayed to whatever God might be listening. Please let this work. I ain't got any more left to lose. The wind swallowed his words, gave nothing back. Clara couldn't sleep. The room was small cold despite the fire downstairs and filled with shadows that seemed to move when she wasn't looking. She lay in the narrow bed listening to the storm rage outside and tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. She'd told Jesse about the baby. Why had she done that? She'd sworn never to tell anyone, never to give them that ammunition against her. But something about him, about this place, made her want to stop hiding. Dangerous, she thought. Getting attached is dangerous. A sound from the hallway made her sit up. Footsteps. Small shuffling, uncertain. Then a soft knock at her door. Clara. Willie's voice muffled and scared. She was out of bed before she could think, pulling on her shawl, opening the door. Willie stood there in his nightshirt, face wet with tears, whole body shaking. "I had a nightmare," he whispered. "Mama was calling me, but I couldn't find her. And then I did find her, but she was in a box in the ground, and she kept calling my name and—" "Shh!" Clara knelt down and gathered him into her arms. "Shh, sweetheart, it's all right. It was just a dream. But it felt real. Dreams always do. That's what makes them so scary." She carried him back to his room, tucked him into bed beside his sleeping brother, and sat on the edge of the mattress until his breathing steadied. "Will you stay?" Willie asked, already half asleep. "Just until I fall asleep. I'll stay. Promise. I promise." She sat there in the darkness, listening to two boys breathe, feeling something crack open in her chest that she'd thought was sealed forever. Maternal instinct. The desperate need to protect. Don't, she told herself, don't love them. It hurts too much when you lose them. But she already knew it was too late. She was dozing in the chair when she heard it. A crash from downstairs. Glass shattering. Then Jesse's voice, raw with panic. "Sam! Sam!" Clara was on her feet instantly. Heart hammering. Willie stirred but didn't wake. She ran to the hallway, nearly collided with Jesse coming up the stairs. "Sam's gone," he said, and the terror in his eyes turned her blood to ice. "His bed's empty. The kitchen window's broken from inside." His voice cracked. "He's gone out into the storm." Through the window at the end of the hall, Clara could see nothing but howling white darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, an 11-year-old boy was running from ghosts no one could see. Jesse grabbed his coat from the hook and was halfway to the door before Clara caught his arm. "You can't go out there blind." "Which direction?" "I don't know. The window faces west, so maybe—" "Think Jesse. Where would he go if he's angry, if he's running from something? Where does an 11-year-old boy go?" Jesse's mind raced. Sam had been angry since Margaret died, but he'd never run before. Never put himself in danger like this. What had changed? Then it hit him like a punch to the gut. Margaret's grave. He's going to his mother's grave. How far? Half-mile up the ridge, but in this storm in the dark. His voice broke. He'll never make it. He'll get turned around and freeze to death before he gets 100 yards. Clara was already pulling on her boots. "I'm coming with you." "No, stay with Willie." "Willie's asleep. Sam's dying." She met his eyes with fierce determination. "I didn't come 2,000 miles to watch this family fall apart on my first night." There was no time to argue. Jesse grabbed a lantern, a rope, extra blankets. They plunged into the storm together. The cold hit Clara like a physical assault. Within seconds, her face was numb, her eyes streaming, her lungs burning with every breath. She couldn't see more than 3 feet ahead. The lantern was useless, just a feeble glow swallowed by howling white nothing. "Stay close!" Jesse shouted over the wind. "Grab my coat and don't let go!" She seized a handful of fabric and held on with all her strength. They pushed forward, Jesse breaking a path through waist-deep drifts, Clara stumbling behind him. "Sam!" Jesse's voice was ragged. "Sam!" No answer. Just wind and snow, and the terrible knowledge that a child was somewhere in this frozen hell. They'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes. Clara had lost all sense of time when she felt Jesse stop. His whole body had gone rigid. "What is it?" she shouted. "Blood!" Clara looked down. Even in the darkness, she could see it, a dark stain on the white snow already being covered by fresh powder. And beside it, a small boot print. "He's hurt," Jesse said. "Must have fallen." But he kept going. That's good. That means he was still moving. They followed the prints, losing them, finding them again, praying the wind wouldn't erase them completely. Clara's hands had gone numb. Her feet were blocks of ice. Every breath felt like swallowing needles. And then she heard it. A voice. Thin and broken, carried on the wind. "Mama! Mama, please!" "Sam!" Jesse lunged forward, nearly pulling Clara off her feet. "Sam, where are you?" "Papa!" The voice came from their left. Jesse changed direction, plowing through a drift that came up to his chest. Clara lost her grip on his coat, stumbled, went down on her hands and knees. "Clara." "I'm fine. Find him." She struggled upright just as Jesse's lantern caught something huddled against a boulder. A small figure curled in on itself, shaking so hard it looked like convulsions. "Sam." Jesse dropped to his knees beside his son. I got you, buddy. It's okay. Papa's here." "I couldn't find her." Sam's voice was barely audible. "I was gonna say goodbye, gonna tell her about the lady, but I couldn't find her grave. I couldn't find her papa." I know. Jesse was already wrapping blankets around the boy, lifting him into his arms. "We gotta get him back. Now. He's hypothermic." Clara took the lantern, led the way. She had no idea which direction was home, but Jesse seemed to know, some instinct born of years on this land. They pushed through the storm, Sam's small body limp in his father's arms. "Stay awake, Sam." Jesse's voice was desperate. "Talk to me. Stay awake." "I'm tired, Papa." "I know, but you gotta fight. You hear me? You gotta fight." "Mama didn't fight. She just went away." Clara felt tears freeze on her cheeks. "Sam, can you hear me?" The boy stirred slightly. "Miss Whitmore." "That's right. And I need you to do something for me. I need you to be angry." "What?" "I know you're angry, Sam. At God, at your father, at me. And right now, I need you to use that anger. Use it to stay awake. Use it to fight. Can you do that?" Silence. Then weakly. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "Because you're the first person in 3 years who's told me the truth about anything, and I'm not ready to lose that." Another silence. Then Sam's hand reached out from under the blankets and grabbed her sleeve. "Don't let me die." "I won't." "Promise." She thought about Willie asking the same question. Thought about all the promises she'd made and broken. Thought about Thomas, about the baby she'd lost, about every single thing that had taught her never to promise anything. "I promise," she said. They found the house by pure luck, or maybe grace. Jesse carried Sam inside while Clara stoked the fire. Boiled water gathered every blanket she could find. They stripped off Sam's frozen clothes and wrapped him in quilts by the hearth, feeding him warm broth, one spoonful at a time. His lips were blue. His skin was gray. He kept drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling about his mother, about graves, about a woman from back east who was going to fix everything. "Should we get the doctor?" Clara asked. "Doc Webb's in Miles City, 2 hours in good weather. In this storm?" Jesse shook his head. "We're on our own." So they worked through the night, taking turns holding Sam close, sharing body heat, feeding him broth and tea, talking to him whenever he started to fade, asking questions, demanding answers, refusing to let him slip away. At some point, Willie appeared in the doorway, woken by the commotion. Clara expected panic tears, the hysterics of a frightened child. Instead, he walked calmly to his brother's side and crawled under the blankets with him. "What are you doing?" Jesse asked. "Keeping him warm." Willie's voice was matter-of-fact. "Mama used to do this when we were cold. Said 2 bodies are better than 1. Something flickered in Jesse's eyes. Pain and pride and desperate hope all tangled together. "That's right, buddy. That's exactly right." The four of them huddled by the fire until dawn crept gray through the windows. The storm had finally broken. Sam's color was better, his breathing steady. When he opened his eyes and saw Willie curled against him, he started to cry. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "Shh." Jesse gathered both boys into his arms. "You're safe now. That's all that matters. I wanted to tell Mama about Miss Whitmore. I wanted to ask if it was okay to let someone else help us. But I couldn't find her grave, and then I got lost, and I thought I was gonna die, and you'd be alone again, and it would be my fault. None of this is your fault." Jesse's voice cracked. "Not Mama dying, not the ranch struggling, not any of it. You hear me, Sam. You're 11 years old. None of this should be on your shoulders." Clara watched them from across the room, throat tight with emotions she couldn't name. She thought about slipping away, giving them privacy, but Willie looked up and held out his hand to her. Clara should come too. She hesitated. This was their family, their moment. She was still a stranger here, still an outsider who'd arrived less than 24 hours ago. But Willie's hand stayed outstretched. And after a moment, Jesse looked at her too. "He's right," Jesse said quietly. "You saved him. You're part of this now, whether you plan to be or not." Clara crossed the room and knelt beside them. Willie immediately grabbed her hand. Sam didn't pull away when her shoulder touched his. "And Jesse." Jesse looked at her with something that might have been gratitude, or might have been the beginning of trust. "Thank you," he said. "I just followed you through the snow." "No, you made him fight. You gave him a reason to stay awake." He swallowed hard. "I've been trying to reach that boy for 3 years. You did it in one night. I didn't do anything special. I just told him the truth. Maybe that's what's been missing." Jesse looked at his sons, both of them pressed against his chest like they were afraid he might disappear. "Maybe I've been so busy trying to protect them from the hard stuff that I forgot they're strong enough to handle it." They stayed there until the fire burned low and the boys fell asleep. Then Jesse carried them upstairs one at a time, tucking them into the same bed so they could hold on to each other. When he came back down, Clara was sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. "You should sleep too," he said. "I don't think I can." She looked up at him. "I keep seeing him out there in the snow. Keep hearing him call for his mother." Jesse sat down across from her. "First winter after Margaret died, Sam used to sleepwalk. Found him out in the barn once, middle of the night, bare feet in 6 inches of snow. Said he was looking for her. Said he could hear her calling him. What did you do? Put bells on the doors, slept on the floor outside his room for 3 months. He rubbed his face. Thought he'd gotten past it. Grief doesn't work like that. It just finds new ways to haunt you. You sound like you know something about that." Clara was quiet for a long moment. "My brother died when I was 12, scarlet fever. For years afterward, I used to set a place for him at the table. Couldn't stop myself. My mother would clear it away without a word, and the next meal I'd do it again." "How'd you stop?" "I didn't. Not really. I just learned to set the place in my head instead of on the table." She met his eyes. "The grief doesn't go away, Jesse. You just get better at carrying it." He nodded slowly. "Margaret used to say something like that. Said sorrow was like a stone in your pocket. You could let it drag you down, or you could use the weight to keep you grounded." She sounds like she was wise. "She was the best person I ever knew." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And I've spent 3 years feeling guilty for still being alive." Clara reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "That's not what she would have wanted." "I know, but knowing something and feeling it are 2 different things." They sat in silence as the sun rose higher, painting the kitchen gold. Clara thought about getting up, starting breakfast, doing something useful. But she was tired down to her bones, and Jessie's hand was warm under hers, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel completely alone. "Clara." "Yes." "I'm glad you're here." She squeezed his hand. "So am I." The next few days passed in a fragile peace. Sam was recovering, though he caught a cold from his adventure that kept him in bed coughing and miserable. Willie appointed himself his brother's caretaker, bringing water and extra blankets and reporting to Clara every hour on Sam's condition. And Clara fell into the rhythm of the household, like she'd been there for years. She rose before dawn, got the fires going, started breakfast. She cleaned and mended and organized, bringing order to a house that had forgotten what order looked like. She sat with Sam while he slept, read to Willie from a battered copy of Robinson Crusoe, and learned the 100 small details that made the Blackwood Ranch function. The stove with its cracked firebox. The pump that froze if you didn't keep water in the pipe. The chickens that needed feeding twice a day. The cow that only gave milk if you talked to her while you worked the particular way Jesse liked his coffee, black as midnight and strong enough to stand a spoon in. She learned the boys, too. Willie, who was hungrier for affection than food, who followed her around like a shadow, who had 1,000 questions about everything, and a surprising talent for numbers. Sam, who kept his distance but watched her constantly, who tested her with small rebellions, and seemed surprised when she didn't react with anger. "You're not like the other ladies," Sam said one afternoon. He was sitting up in bed working on arithmetic problems Clara had assigned. "The ones from church who used to bring food after Mama died. How am I different? They treated us like we were made of glass, whispered when they thought we couldn't hear, looked at Papa like he was something broken that needed fixing." Sam's pencil scratched across the slate. "You just treat us like regular people." "That's because you are regular people." "No, we're not. We're the poor Blackwood boys who lost their mama. That's all anyone sees." Clara sat on the edge of his bed. "Can I tell you a secret?" Sam looked up wary. "What?" "Back in Philadelphia, I was the poor Whitmore widow who couldn't keep a baby. That's all anyone saw. They looked at me like I was damaged goods, like tragedy was catching, and they might get it if they stood too close. That's stupid." "Yes, it is. But that's how people are sometimes. They don't know what to do with pain, so they push it away. Push the person carrying it away." Clara met his eyes. "You're not your grief, Sam. It's part of you, but it's not all of you. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to know you." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly, she almost missed it. "Do you really think I'm smart?" "I think you're brilliant, and stubborn, and brave in ways you don't even know yet." Mama used to say that, the stubborn part anyway. "Then she knew you well." Something shifted in Sam's expression. Not quite a smile, but the closest thing Clara had seen from him. "Maybe you're not completely terrible." High praise indeed. "Don't let it go to your head." She laughed a real laugh, surprising herself. "I'll try to stay humble." That night, after the boys were asleep, Jessie found her on the porch again. She was wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars emerge in a sky so vast it made her feel like a speck of dust. "You're gonna catch cold out here," he said. "The air helps me think." "What are you thinking about?" "Philadelphia. This place. How different they are." She pulled the blanket tighter. Back east, everything was so crowded, so loud. You couldn't take a breath without tasting smoke and coal and other people's business. "You miss it?" "No." The certainty of her answer surprised her. "I thought I would. But this..." She gestured at the endless darkness, the glittering stars, the profound silence broken only by wind through grass. "This feels more honest somehow. Like there's nowhere to hide, so you might as well tell the truth." Jessie leaned against the porch rail beside her. "Margaret said something like that when I first brought her here. She was a town girl, you know. Grew up in St. Louis. First time she saw the ranch, she cried for 3 days straight." "What changed?" "Fourth day she stopped crying and started working. Said if this was going to be her life, she was going to make it a good one." A small smile crossed his face. 2 months later, she knew more about running this place than I did. You loved her very much. Still do. He said it simply without embarrassment. Don't reckon that'll ever change. Clara nodded. I still love Thomas, my husband, even though he's been gone 3 years. Does it ever get easier? No, but it gets different, like a wound that heals into a scar. Still there, still part of you, but not bleeding anymore. They stood in comfortable silence, two people who understood grief in a way that didn't need explanation. Clara. Yes. I've been thinking about what you said, about the foreclosure. Her stomach tightened. What about it? I've got a buyer interested in the east pasture. Good land, good water, but I'd have to sell at least 50 acres to make the payment. He paused. That's 50 acres Margaret and I cleared together. 50 acres I promised I'd never let go. But if you don't sell, you could lose everything. I know. That's the problem. He turned to face her. I've been carrying this alone for 2 years, trying to figure out how to save the ranch and raise the boys and keep food on the table without anybody's help. And it's killing me, Clara. It's killing all of us. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'd look at the books with me. See if there's something I'm missing. Another way out. His voice dropped. I'm asking for help. And that's something I ain't done since Margaret died. Clara felt the weight of his trust settle on her shoulders. This man who'd sent for a stranger out of desperation was now opening up the most vulnerable part of his life. I'm not good with numbers, she admitted. Neither am I, but 2 heads are better than 1, right? I suppose so. Tomorrow night then, after the boys are down. All right. He nodded, seemed about to go inside, then stopped. Clara. Yes. What you've done this week with Sam, with Willie, with this whole house, it's more than I had any right to expect. I want you to know that. Whatever happens, I'm grateful. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone with the stars, and a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the blanket. The books were worse than Jessie had let on. Clara sat at the kitchen table squinting at columns of numbers that seemed to blur together. 3 years of records, most of them incomplete, showing a slow slide from prosperity to disaster. This payment here, she said, pointing at a figure. What's it for? Seed. Had to replant after the locusts came through summer of '79. And this one, medicine for the cattle, lost 15 head to blackleg that winter. Every entry told a story of loss, of struggle, of a man fighting against forces too big to defeat alone. Bad weather, bad luck, bad timing. The ranch wasn't failing because Jessie was incompetent. It was failing because the universe had decided to stack the deck against him. What about this? Clara pointed at a name she didn't recognize. Hendricks. Monthly payment, same amount going back 2 years. What's that? Jessie's jaw tightened. Margaret's hospital bills. But she's been gone 3 years. Hospital don't care. They want their money whether she's alive to use it or not. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. How much do you still owe? $200. 200, Jessie, that's more than the foreclosure payment. I know, but Margaret needed those treatments. I would have sold the whole ranch to give her another year. His voice cracked. Another month, another day. Clara stared at the numbers, something nagging at the back of her mind. These treatments, what were they for? The fever. Doctors in Miles City said it was typhoid at first, then changed their minds. Tried 6 medicines, each one more expensive than the last. None of them worked. Were they? She hesitated, not sure how to ask. Were they real doctors, properly trained? Jessie looked at her sharply. What are you getting at? Nothing. I just... She flipped through more pages, found what she was looking for. Jessie, look at this. The same doctor charged you for 6 different treatments in 1 month. But these dates... She pointed. You told me Margaret couldn't even leave her bed in August. How was she traveling to Miles City for treatments twice a week? A dangerous light came into Jesse's eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying someone took advantage of you. A grieving husband who would pay anything to save his wife. Clara kept her voice steady, even as anger boiled in her chest. These charges don't make sense. Either someone made mistakes in the billing or they robbed me blind while my wife was dying. Jesse's fist slammed against the table, making Clara jump. God damn it! God damn them all! Jesse. 3 years. 3 years I've been paying that bill like a good honest man, while those vultures— He stood up so fast his chair fell over. I'm going to Miles City. Tonight. I'm gonna find that doctor and what beat him? Get yourself arrested. Clara stood too, put herself between Jesse and the door. That won't help your boys. That won't save the ranch. I don't care. Yes, you do. You care more than anyone I've ever met. That's why you're so angry. She grabbed his arms, forced him to look at her. But anger won't fix this. Only working the problem will fix this. Jesse's breath came in harsh gasps. His whole body trembled with rage. But slowly, the fury in his eyes faded to something that looked like exhaustion. What do I do? He whispered. Clara, what the hell do I do? We figure it out. Together. She guided him back to his chair, righted it, sat him down. First, we write to this hospital and demand an itemized accounting. If they can't justify these charges, they don't get another cent. Second, we find out if there's anyone else this doctor has taken advantage of. I'd bet money we're not the only ones. Third. You said we. Clara blinked. What? You said we figure it out. We write to the hospital. Jesse looked at her with something like wonder. You're not even thinking about leaving. She realized he was right. Somewhere in the past week, this had stopped being his problem and started being theirs. His burdens had become her burdens. His family had become her family. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. I made a promise, she said quietly. One day at a time. This is just another day. Jesse reached out and took her hand. Not romantically, there was nothing tender in the gesture. Just one person holding on to another in the middle of a storm. Margaret would have liked you, he said. She always said I needed someone to argue with me, keep me from doing stupid things. Someone has to. For the first time since she'd met him, Jesse Blackwood laughed. It was a rusty sound out of practice but real. Human. Alive. All right, he said. Let's work the problem. They stayed up until nearly dawn, going through every piece of paper, every receipt, every record of the past 3 years. By the time they finished, Clara's eyes were burning and her hand was cramped from taking notes. But they had a plan. Write to the hospital. Dispute the fraudulent charges. Delay the foreclosure with a partial payment. Sell off some of the less productive land, but keep the heart of the ranch intact. Cut expenses where they could. Work harder, smarter together. It wasn't a perfect solution. There were no guarantees. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. I should let you sleep, Jesse said, walking her to the stairs. I should say the same to you. Ranchers don't sleep. Didn't you know that? School teachers neither. They stood at the bottom of the stairs, the house quiet around them, the first gray light of dawn creeping through the windows. Clara. Yes. I didn't just bring you here for the boys, or the ranch. He paused, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easy. I brought you here because I was drowning, and I didn't know how to ask for help. You asked. That's what the letter was. The letter was business, a transaction. But this, he gestured between them. This is something else. I don't know what to call it. Maybe we don't have to call it anything. Maybe we just let it be what it is. And what is it? Clara thought about the question. About Philadelphia and Montana. About Thomas and Margaret. About 2 broken people finding each other in the wreckage of their lives. Hope, she said finally. It's hope. Jesse nodded slowly. Then, almost shyly, he leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Sleep well, Clara." "You too, Jesse." She climbed the stairs on legs that felt like water. Behind her, she heard Jesse bank the fire, check the locks, settle into the rocking chair by the hearth. Protecting his family. As he'd always done. As he'd always do. But now, for the first time, he wasn't doing it alone. Clara reached her room, closed the door, and lay down on the narrow bed. Through the wall, she could hear the boys breathing slow and steady, peaceful in sleep. Below, the creak of Jesse's rocking chair kept rhythm with the wind outside. She closed her eyes and let herself imagine a future she'd stopped believing in long ago. A family, a home, a place to belong. Maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found it. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for Clara to stop feeling like a guest in her own life. She woke before dawn now without needing to think about it. Her hands knew where the kindling was kept, how to coax the stubborn pump to life, exactly how much coffee Jesse liked in his cup. The boys had stopped looking at her like she might disappear. Willie had started calling her Clara instead of Miss Whitmore. And Sam had stopped calling her anything at all, which somehow felt like progress. The letter to the hospital had been sent. The partial payment had bought them 3 more months. And somewhere in the chaos of survival, Clara had started to believe they might actually make it. "You're humming." She turned from the stove to find Jesse standing in the doorway, hat in hand, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Was I?" Something about gathering roses." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "My mother used to sing that. I didn't realize I was—" "I ain't complaining." Jesse hung his hat on the peg and moved to the table. "Just noticed, that's all. You've been doing it more lately." "Doing what?" "Looking like you belong here." The words landed somewhere soft in her chest. She turned back to the stove before he could see how much they affected her. "Breakfast will be ready in 10 minutes. Clara. The boys should be down soon. Willie's been sleeping better, but Sam's still—" "Clara." His voice was gentle but firm. "Look at me." She did. He was standing closer now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the new lines around his mouth that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," he said. "The ranch." Did the bank respond to, "Not the ranch, us"? Her heart stuttered. Us. The preacher's coming through next week, for the Davidson wedding over on Miller Creek. Jesse turned his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture she'd come to recognize. "I was thinking maybe he could do ours at the same time." "Ours?" "We talked about making this legal, giving you claim to the property. But that was before—" He stopped, started again. "Before I knew you. Before you saved Sam. Before you sat up all night going through books that weren't your problem to solve." "Jesse, I ain't asking for love. I know you've got a husband in your heart still, same as I've got Margaret in mine. But what we've got here, whatever this is—" He gestured between them. "It's real. It matters. And I think it deserves more than just a business arrangement." Clara's throat tightened. She thought about Thomas, about the promises she'd made to him, about the life she'd imagined before everything fell apart. Then she thought about the past 3 weeks. About Jesse's quiet strength and Sam's grudging acceptance and Willie's fierce little heart. About the way this frozen, empty ranch had started to feel like home. "What are you asking me, Jesse?" "Exactly. I'm asking you to be my wife, not just on paper, in truth." His eyes held hers, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. "I'm asking for a chance to build something real with you, if you'll have me." She should say no. Should explain that she wasn't capable of being what he needed, what any man needed. Should tell him about the scarring, about the baby she'd lost, about the doctor in Philadelphia who'd told her she'd never carry a child to term. Instead, she heard herself say, "Can I think about it?" Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. Of course. Take all the time you need. He left for the barn, and Clara stood alone in the kitchen, her hands trembling against the counter. What was she doing? The day passed in a blur of routine breakfast lessons with the boys, mending, cooking, the endless small tasks that kept a household running. Clara moved through them mechanically, her mind spinning with Jesse's proposal and all the reasons she should refuse. He deserved a real wife, someone who could give him more children, who wasn't broken, who didn't carry the weight of a dead baby like a stone in her chest. He deserved better than her. You're thinking too loud. Clara looked up. Sam stood in the doorway of the kitchen, a bucket of milk in each hand. Excuse me. Papa gets that same look when he's chewing on something, like his brain's trying to eat itself. Sam set the buckets on the counter. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong? Liar. Samuel. You and Papa had a fight. I heard him come in this morning, heard you stop humming when he started talking. Sam crossed his arms. What did he do? Clara sighed. There was no point lying to this boy he saw through deception like it was made of glass. He asked me to marry him. Sam's expression didn't change. Thought you were already doing that. On paper, yes. But he wants more. And you don't. It's complicated. Grown-up